name is John Petrak. I'm the Executive Vice President of the Realtors Association of Metropolitan Pittsburgh. The association this year is endeavoring to produce a video series relative to fair housing within the greater Pittsburgh metropolitan area, as well as diversity and inclusion within the many specialties and facets of the real estate industry itself. This morning I'm joined by Oscar Hill, an appraiser. Oscar, thank you very much for joining us and participating. Now I notice you have two designations, MAI and SRA. Could you tell us what they stand for?
Well, at one time the MAI had a name, but after we merged with other appraisal organizations, now it's just letters, but it refers to being able to perform commercial work. And so it's a commercial designation as opposed to a residential appraisal designation. So that's what the MAI, it used to stand for member of the Appraisal Institute, but now it's just letters. And the SRA is the same thing. It used to have a meaning, but now that's a residential designation. And so basically a person with SRA can do any property like 1 to 4 and, relatively small apartments. MAI can do anything from, marinas, hotels, malls, everything.
Okay, very good. Now, how long have you been in the industry?
Well, I started back in 1986, and at that time, the way I got into it, because I'll be honest with you, John, when I started, I had no idea what an appraiser was, and growing up, I didn't even know any appraisers, black or otherwise. But I was working at a furniture company, weirdly enough, and a disaster appraiser came through. Usually in the course of talking, trying to sell a few, sofas and such. You ask people, well, what do they do? And so this appraiser from FEMA came in, and he told me that he went after disasters, floods, and hurricanes, and appraised what remains of, various properties after a disaster. And automatically it seemed pretty cool to me. So, and I looked at it two ways. I said, well, you can help the people. And then I became a licensed real estate agent, and there was a point in my career where I had to choose whether or not I wanted to pursue the real estate side of it in terms of sales, or look at appraisal, because there was one little short chapter in the realtor's course of study that had to do with appraisal. And I thought about it and I said, while I'm waiting to sell this house, I could starve out.
Yeah.
But, once you're doing appraisal, you can get paid within 30 days. So obviously I lean more toward appraisal and less toward the realtor side of the appraisal industry. So that's how I got in. And weirdly enough, the first thing that happened is I became a part of the tax assessor's office. And
For Allegheny County?
No, not quite. At that time, I was living in Atlanta, Georgia, and so
Okay, now, what specific education does it take to enter the field?
Well, there was a point in which we were thinking that we would require at least the Appraisal Foundation. The Appraisal Foundation is that organization that's been set up by Congress that kind of provides standards and educational qualifications through the AQB, which is the Appraiser Qualifications Board. So at one point the thought was that let's at a minimum have everybody have a college education to start. And then later the thought was, well, maybe this is somewhat discriminatory, not necessarily racially discriminatory, but there were a lot of people that had great experience but no formal education, and so you were closing the door to a lot of people that understood value, as opposed to people who may have gone to college that don't even have a concept of value.
Yeah, and
so what they did is they backed off of that a little bit. So to start, you have to have some college. And by the time that you intend to become certified, either residentially or commercially, then they would want you to have a college education. So in addition to that, there are classroom hours. To start off, to be a trainee, they start you off with 75 classroom hours, plus the trainee course, which is 4 more hours. And then after that, I'm going to skip one classification. There's a such thing as a licensed residential, but the state of Pennsylvania doesn't have that, so I can just go to certification. We have a certified residential appraiser, then we have the certified general, and general means that he can appraise or she can appraise any type of commercial property. And so there's 200 hours for the certified residential of classroom work, and 300 hours for the certified general. Plus, the AQB requires for a certified residential person to have 1,500 hours within 12 months, and the certified general person to have 3,000 hours within 18 months. There's always somebody that's going to try to break the basic parameters, because you'll try to have people to have 3,000 hours in 6 months. But a lot of times, when you cram it like that, you really don't get the type of experience that you need.
Right.
And appraisal to me is a fun type of industry, because no two assignments are the same. There's a little bit in the office, there's a little bit in the field. You get to go out, you get to try to solve appraisal problems, and no two appraisal problems are the same. And so I like the idea. It's pretty much like being a detective in a way. You got a mystery and you're trying to solve, who done it or what is the value. So.
Yeah. Now, unfortunately, the Appraisal Institute's kind of been in the news a little bit lately. Couple things relative to the lack of diversity within the industry, and also with certain types and styles of your traditional valuation formulas. So would you care to add a little bit to the background?
Sure. When I started in the Appraisal Institute, I remember taking my first major qualifying education course for the MAI back in 1988. And that was an appraisal writing course, and it was down in the Sheraton Hotel, just a little bit north of Millennium Mall in Orlando, Florida. And when I showed up on Sunday night, everybody was sure that I was not supposed to be there. So I found myself defending myself and justifying that, yes, I'm supposed to be here. So the Appraisal Institute at that time, I hate to say it, and forgive me if this sounds a little crass, but at that time it was just a group of old white guys, and there weren't even many women at that time. It's just like maybe one or two, and just me, and everybody. Women were accepted in the Appraisal Institute before people of color. So, but now things have radically changed. There are people of every race, creed, national origin. And one of the things that the Appraisal Institute, to answer your initial question, one of the things that the Appraisal Institute has been doing is trying to recruit to women. When I became chapter of the at that time it was called the Pittsburgh Metropolitan Chapter, the Appraisal Institute was focusing on embracing more women, because there had been some complaints that it was a good old boy network, and not many things were catered to women and all that sort of thing. And one of the things that I tried to do is, when I became chapter president, is to make sure that there were programs in place that would embrace women, so that they could feel just as a part of the organization as anybody else. And
So the Appraisal Institute is actually putting together a concerted effort to
Yes.
recruit more minorities and...
women first, then minorities, yes.
Okay.
And one of the things too, that if you allow me to add another comment, is that, you know, in my initial remarks, I kind of said to you that I didn't even know that an appraiser existed as a career path. And one of the things that the Appraisal Institute is now doing is recruiting on the college level, and specifically to colleges and universities that have real estate programs. And one of the things that I would like for the Appraisal Institute to consider is to, you know, not wait to the college level, because at that point the die is largely cast as to where a person is going to land up in their professional careers. So therefore, if you just, you know, drop your recruiting back down to the high school level and show up at some of the career days. Because if I had known about this earlier, I would have gotten involved in it much earlier. You know, and so bias takes a number of forms. Some of it is active and some of it is passive. And just the fact that you just don't even think about reaching out, that's a passive thing. And it's not meant to be harmful or anything, or it's not meant to hold anybody down. It's just that I'm recruiting, but I'm recruiting to people that are just like me, you know, and not like everybody else in the world.
Right. So they definitely have designed an outreach program.
Yes.
That's a great news. One last question for you. You've been in the business, in the industry for a while. Have you ever felt that you've experienced bias from a consumer or a fellow real estate professional?
Well, yeah.
Other than the meeting in Orlando.
In Orlando, yeah. There have been a few things. I've gotten jobs, and you know, sometimes there's quotas, so to speak, and you get the job, but then you know, there have been a struggle to get training on the job. So I was at a certain particular job, and once I got the job, you know, I was told that this specific individual would be responsible for training. And I remember going back to that individual every day for about 3 months, every business day for about 3 months, saying, do you have time to train me now? And this went on and it went on and it went on, and to ad nauseum. And then finally, I just said to myself, well, I'll just read everything I can read. And, you know, again, every man for himself and God for us all. So, you know, you have to, at some point, you just have to take your career into your own hands and not wait for others who have been designated by upper management to help you, but, you know, on their level decide that they don't have time. So that happened. And then when I got to be chief appraiser down in Putnam County is halfway between Atlanta and Augusta, you know, and so what happened there, I did a reappraisal of all the properties. The county was in desperate need of this happening. So when I did the reappraisal and I did the reassessment, the assumption was that it was automatically wrong because I was in charge of it. And so there were 3 lawsuits filed when it was finished, and I found myself defending my work in court, you know, something that I had never intended to do. And there were all sorts of articles, you know, Hill does this, and then the concerned citizens went about encouraging everybody to appeal their evaluations and all that. So we had people lined up in the courthouse all the way down the street, and so it was a time where I was pretty much chained to my chair, and I gained a lot of weight during that time. But because there was, you know, it was from morning to night, you're adjudicating cases, you know, and sometimes even on the weekend. But
Well, Oscar, thank you very much for joining us. We appreciate you participating in this series. Is there anything else anything else you'd like to add, or any general comments?
Yeah, just one other thing. I work for a bank, a rather large bank in town, and I'm a reviewer appraiser with them. And I happened to see an appraisal that was done on Warrenton Avenue, which is part of it's Belzoover and the other part is Allentown. This was a black-owned barber shop. It's a very nice one, actually. It was closer to Allentown, but the comps that were clearly in Allentown had, tremendous adjustments and that sort of thing downward. So there's still work to be done, and improving bias within the appraisal industry is a very difficult thing to do. And I just kind of felt that something was wrong, but John, I just couldn't prove it. And allowing people to know that there is an issue, at least it gets people to begin to think about, well, maybe we can do things in a better way.
Right. The conversation has to start.
Yes, it has to start somewhere.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.